Hey everyone, I'm Corey Tanisoff, as always, joined by co-host Joe Mendoza, and this is the We Talk Politics podcast. Right now, we have a lot on the docket for today. It has been a heavy news weekend, especially with reports coming out about our current president. Gerald, take it away.
All right, yeah. As Corey mentioned, the New York Times, well, really no friend of President Trump's, but still a considered a venerable newspaper and press company, has released a report yesterday afternoon, saying they've obtained certain documents of President Trump's tax returns, showing some pretty striking um, notes that need to be taken into consideration for people. And one of the biggest things, at least one of the biggest headline grabbers about this report that the New York Times has released, is that in the year 2016 and 2017, in each of those years, the president only paid $750 in taxes, federal taxes. And that is due partially because of the businesses that he owns and everything. He has reported so many losses that it brought his federal tax bill down. Um, that is also accompanied by the fact that 11 of the last 18 years examined by the in the reports by the New York Times, they're showing that the president paid zero federal taxes in those 11 years. And during that time, he also at one point received a $72.9 million tax refund that is right now the subject of an audit. That is the audit that the president keeps on mentioning every single time, the $72.9 million tax refund from the IRS. And, you know, he also has, based on these records that were reviewed, over $400 million in loans that are due to be paid back within the next 4 years, and they don't know if he's going to be able to pay those loans back. Also, you know, even while declaring losses, and I linked the New York Times report that I'm using as a reference here in the description if you want to read along or if you want to look at it for yourself. But in these, another point that the New York Times is trying to make is that even while declaring losses, he has managed to enjoy a lavish lifestyle by taking tax deductions on what most people would consider personal expenses, including residences, aircraft, and $70,000 in hairstyling for television. Also, Ivanka Trump, while working as an employee for the Trump Organization, appears to have received consulting fees that also help reduce the family's tax bill. And as president, he has received more money from foreign sources and U.S. interest groups than previously known, though the records do not reveal any previously unreported connections to Russia. So I know there's a lot to take in at the moment, but in essence, this is almost a confirmation of what most people either were scared of or were waiting for from, you know, from the president's tax returns that he has vehemently refused to release for multiple different years, for multiple different reasons, for an extended period of time. And I think it's because it shows what many people would consider somewhat of an embarrassing nature of his business practices, or just something that is so optically terrible for him as president. He would have never won if he would have released those during his initial campaign for election. Corey, your initial thoughts on all that information?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned in there, he is hundreds of $1 million in debt that is due to be collected on in the next 4 years. And he also reported losing millions upon millions from his golf courses over the course of the last 15 years. And in those last 15, 10 of which years he paid nothing. One of the president has accused New York Times of illegally obtaining these records, and it does seem to come at a bad time for him as the election is just starting to gear up or actually get towards its end of the campaign trail. And with all this information coming to light, it may actually, put over some of those independent or swing voters who were undecided, and it might push them further away from the Trump train. Um, Interestingly enough, I think that one of what this really highlights is the fact that the IRS system and the taxation system in America is easily manipulated, and it is not working the way as intended. Right now, he's under audit, as he claims, and if they find any wrongdoing, then he'll have to pay for that. But if they don't, then it just, as I said, highlights the inefficiencies of the American tax system and the IRS's work here.
I mean, yeah, I think, like I said, the main reason really that he's been hiding them, even though there's still a side to me that believes that there has been some possibly illegal practices going on through the IRS and through the tax system. But the biggest reason why he hasn't released these tax returns and tax documents either to Congress or to the Southern District of New York Attorney's Office or any of the multiple groups of people that are trying to investigate him is because the optics are, like I said, really bad. It makes him look really bad. But should something come up that during this audit that something was illegally done, I don't know if this will affect. I'm not sure because I was talking to my parents about this last night, and I told them, I said about 30% of the Trump supporters who are behind him already are not going to switch sides simply because of this report. They have gotten good at making excuses for him and defending things or trying to throw other things in a way. Like I remember I was looking through Twitter because the internet started exploding about this subject last night, and I was looking through it, and it said, if the president's getting this much attention on this and that, and then why isn't the left wing media covering the Hunter Biden situation in Ukraine or something? I'm like, look, people who are going to be behind Trump 100% are already making excuses for him. That's not going to change. But like I was telling you earlier, is that this for the undecided voter who might be a Republican who really doesn't like Donald Trump but was going to, hold their nose and vote for him anyway, this might change their mind. This might be, something that really rubs them completely the wrong way, especially after Trump has touted himself multiple times as a president of the people and someone who understands them and is their voice. But after this report, that's just become less and less of a likelihood, I think. And like you said, probably the biggest thing that needs to be fixed is the system itself, as is the case in most situations. Because, well, I don't think you're a fan of the IRS.
No, absolutely not. Yep.
Yeah. You don't think the Internal Revenue Service is worth the money that's being paid to it for its operations, even though I'm sure they provide certain good things, but like in essence, the IRS is the bane of most people's existence. But still, that doesn't change the fact that a law is a law and it needs to be followed accordingly. But also, if something illegal is found and say the president does win re-election, which is still a very high possibility, at this moment, even with all of this information coming out, I still think the president has a good, decent chance to win the election, about as much as Joe Biden does, just because of the nature of the political climate in this country right now. If something illegal comes out, and during the audit they say, illegal practices were found, then I think Congress would do everything they can to push for another impeachment trial. I think at that point is when maybe, depending on how the Senate elections go, we'll look at that in a minute, how the Senate elections go, how the House elections go, how everything else shakes out in the other two chambers in the two chambers of Congress and in the legislative branch of our government, all that, coming into play, that could be another impeachment and most likely, depending on how things go, a removal from office. So we don't know, again, these are stretches, but these are all now becoming possibilities because of situations that have come out.
Yeah, and as we noted before, these are all allegations at this point. We have reason to believe that the New York Times is doing this in good faith. However, there is always a possibility that these are just rumors and nothing more, or that they obtained bad records. I want to circle back for a second to the optics of it. And if these had come out in 2016, he almost certainly would not have won the election. He made his entire platform based on the I'm not a politician, I'm a businessman. I know how to run businesses. I will run America the same way. And then if we were to look at his alleged tax returns right at that point, it would show a completely different story. And maybe people wouldn't have been so keen on electing him into office. However, at this point, I agree with what you said, that about 30% of the people who are voting for Trump are, no matter what, they're going to vote for him, and you can't change that fact. And that may be more than 30%. That could be a significant chunk of his voter base, because if they voted for him in 2016, amongst all other allegations, they will vote for him in 2020, amongst other allegations. So it will be interesting to see how this affects the race, and also what is brought up during the debates tomorrow night.
Yes, and tomorrow night's debate, I'm interested to see it. I was telling you, I am actually becoming more and more of a fan of Chris Wallace as a journalist, as a reporter, and as an anchor, and I'm interested to see, because he is a reporter who likes to hold people's feet to the fire. He likes to, have facts ready. He likes to fact check you if you say something incorrect. And this goes, not, even though he's a Fox News employee and on Fox News, he's someone who holds everyone to the fire. And I think he's done a really good job, especially lately. And you can tell you do a good job holding the president's feet to the fire when the president gets angry at you and starts tweeting about you, about how terrible of a reporter you are. Most of the time, that means you're doing your job. And really, I'm interested to see how he treats Joe Biden and President Trump while they're in front of each other. I did not know this, but there is going to be a small live crowd in the audience at the debate tomorrow, which takes place, if I'm not mistaken, in the state of Ohio. And I always said, like, the president feeds off of crowds, and so this could help the president. Sheila and Eric Sampson Pavilion in Cleveland, Ohio is where this debate will take place. So having a crowd is going to help the president, even though it's a smaller crowd, a live crowd. It helps him. I really do think he feeds off of crowds and that type of energy that he gets from responses to his claims and to his quick-wittedness on the debate stage. Also, I don't know if you heard this. He's trying to demand that Vice President Biden take a drug test either before or after the debate to see if he's on, like, I don't know, Adderall or something that gives him energy, or Ritalin. We don't know. I don't think so. I think the vice president's just good at preparing for debates. If I remember correctly, his debates versus Paul Ryan in 2012. During the 2012 campaign were actually pretty good, but that's because he spent an extensive amount of time preparing for them, going through run-throughs, rehearsing his lines and everything. So we'll see, we'll see how he does. But in any case, the debate is tomorrow, and another subject that is definitely bound to come up tomorrow is the situation with the Supreme Court nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, that the president nominated on Saturday, I believe it was. The announcement of the nomination was on Saturday. And Amy Coney Barrett, if I can pull up some information about her, she is known to be a conservative. I believe she's a Catholic. She is an American lawyer, it has her as. And if I can think about it, this would be the third nominee that the president has put during his first term in office, which I think is a lot relative to other presidents being able to nominate. Was there ever, a president who nominated in recent memory 3 Supreme Court justices?
I can't think of one, but my memory on who appointed who is a little bit outdated.
I think President Obama nominated 3, but that was in an 8-year tenure. Right. So 3 in 4 years seems like a lot, but she is a federal appellate judge and Notre Dame law professor. Like I said, she's a conservative. And as it says, she has long been atop President Donald Trump's Supreme Court shortlist. she was also being considered at the time when Brett Kavanaugh was nominated. She was also on the short list at the time. So I guess she was just next in line in terms of, waiting for to be nominated. She is a mother of seven, former law clerk to the state right wing beacon Justice Antonin Scalia. So she used to be his clerk. She is 48 years old. And that means if she were to get confirmed by the Senate that she would be there for an extended period of time because of the way the Supreme Court works, there are no year limits or term limits. You stay there until you die.
Or
And I
resign.
think, or resign. There have been a number of resignations recently. Um, like we had said, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ginsburg, she stayed until she really could not, but she was really trying to fight to stay there as long as possible. 87 years old. This was her fifth battle with cancer. But then also Justice Kennedy retired. I think just out of old age, he just didn't want to die on the job, and again, that's his decision. And as much as I understand that the Supreme Court is a demanding job, it is a lifetime term. So again, interested to see. There is now a more younger generation of conservatives, I believe, on the bench, on the Supreme Court. In the Supreme Court rather. Neil Gorsuch. I believe he's not over 60. I believe Brett Kavanaugh is around 50 years old, and so same thing with Amy Coney Barrett. And again, I'm interested to see. And you pulled up a statistic earlier, a poll that showed that on average, at least from the poll, 56% of Americans of the voting public think that the winner of this upcoming election should be the one to fill the seat in the Supreme Court. And I mentioned that there had to be a number of Republicans in that position as well, because that's exactly what was said during the nomination of Merrick Garland by President Obama when Antonin Scalia passed away during the year 2016 in the middle of the election cycle, and much earlier. I think it was in February when it happened. So, and Mitch McConnell being the leader of the Senate Majority Leader at the time really blocked that until President Trump was elected, and the results were that Neil Gorsuch, who I think was a good pick in general, honestly, he's probably been the least someone who's really lived up to the position and understood his position as a Supreme Court justice. But he was selected instead of he was confirmed instead of Merrick Garland because of the way that the Republicans held out. And the argument was that the coming election, the will of the people would be most clear after the election. But of course, politics being what it is, especially at a time like this, Mitch McConnell is doing everything he can, as well. The rest of the Republican Party is doing as much as they can to try to push through this nomination as quickly as possible. So we're in a situation where I don't believe the hypocrisy is going to catch up to them enough for them to change their minds, at least on the Republican Party. I do believe that they're going to try to get this done as quickly as possible. Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, is currently the ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which does the initial questioning and approval of Supreme Court justices. And he says he has told Fox News that he wants his committee to approve Amy Coney Barrett, at least in committee, by October 22nd. And that could tee her up, it says, for a nomination for a full Senate vote and confirmation before the end of the month of October, which means just days before the election were to happen, she would be confirmed. And I'm interested to see how that turns out as well. Are one of our favorite websites, the Election Betting Odds. They're also tracking the odds on whether this will happen before election, between election day and inauguration day, and after election day. And it's at 74.3% chance that this confirmation will be completed before election day, November 3rd. So your thoughts on the whole Supreme Court situation right now?
Yeah, well, another interesting fact about the Senate Judiciary Committee is that there are quite a few big names that sit on that committee, with Ted Cruz, Amy Klobuchar, Cory Booker, and Kamala Harris also on the Democratic side of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So those three, the last three, will have a good bit of fun dealing with Donald Trump's nomination or nominee for Supreme Court. And I don't think that they're going to hold back on it because, as it's very obvious, the Democrats don't want Trump to put another Supreme Court justice in, and they would rather have it hold out until the election comes through and the next president or Donald Trump retains his seat, whichever one happens. Notably, that New York Times Siena College poll that we mentioned, which showed the percentage of those polled their thoughts on who should appoint the next Supreme Court justice. They also polled to the question, whom do you trust to do a better job of choosing a Supreme Court justice? 50% said Joe Biden, 7% did not have an answer, and 43% said the current president, Donald Trump. So that will be interesting to see how it comes out. I do see a distinct chance of Amy Coney Barrett being the next Supreme Court justice, just based on the fact that they are running through a Republican-controlled Senate right now, and that will make things a lot easier towards the pathway to confirming the next Supreme Court justice. The issue that could happen is some of the Republicans who were there for the 2015 or 16 nomination that President Obama put in before he left. Those same people might follow through and have the same sense of character on this issue and might want to wait until the next president takes office.
I have, from what I can tell, the big wild cards from what you see, the Republicans are most likely to break ranks, like Mitt Romney, and a few others. I'm not sure who else, but I know Mitt Romney was one of the biggest one. He already said he'll probably just vote to get it done as quickly as possible. Then again, he is also a conservative right-wing Republican who wouldn't mind having another conservative judge on the Supreme Court. Dianne Feinstein, who is battling a very hard-fought Senate re-election campaign in Maine right now, and she is someone who voted to confirm Brett Kavanaugh at the time, and her constituency was not happy with her about that, especially considering that earlier in the process she said she most likely would not vote for Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation, but instead changed her mind and stuck to the party line. She has said she believes that the incoming president should choose the next should fill the Supreme Court seat. And I believe Joni Ernst as well, who is also battling a very hard-fought re-election campaign in Iowa that still technically favors her, but the polling and everything is showing her within the margin of error. She said she most likely would wait until after the election to see if the newly elected president, should there be one, should choose the next Supreme Court justice. So there's two right there, and I'm not sure if anyone else would be compelled to wait. I'm really not. I know the Judiciary Committee is going to roll through this as fast as possible because that's what they're really known for. I don't think we're going to have another situation where we're going to see the lambasting behavior from both sides of the aisle from what happened when Justice Kavanaugh was going through his confirmation hearings. If you remember, that was a bit of a circus.
Oh, yeah.
I don't believe that's going to be an issue because there's not an outstanding situation that someone's going to try to grab against you, like with accusations of sexual assault and histories of drinking problems in college or anything. That's not going to be a subject matter this time. This time they're going to have to be, I think, just by default, they're going to be a lot more civilized towards the situation, but they are going to, the Democrats at least are going to do everything they can to stall as much as possible for the sake of, trying to slow the process down as much as possible, knowing that right now they do not have a majority that can secure them what they want to do in the Senate. So, all that being said, this also takes plays into the fact that we are running towards a very, and I mean extremely close presidential election. In terms of, we could see another situation like we saw in 2000, where in Florida it could be close enough for an automatic recount that causes trouble, or in another state. I believe Florida's not the only one, but in other states, automatic recounts are triggered when the results are less than 0.5%, I believe, of difference in terms of who voted for who. And all that being said, depending on how and seeing how things went the last time the year 2000 between George Bush and Al Gore, and how this went to the Supreme Court, I think some people are anticipating that kind of outcome again, possibly, especially right now with the way the political climate is and how divisive this election really has been, and is going to be even more so in the next coming weeks. So, all that being said, the president has not made it a secret that he prefers to have six Supreme Court justices, clearly in a conservative viewpoint, instead of five, on the off chance that something election related goes to the Supreme Court, and that he would have that extra cushion to be able to, be given the presidency the same way that George W. Bush was given a presidency in the year 2000. So, Corey, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it really comes down to how the confirmation hearing goes and any of the hearings around it, because we can't start talking about the future without first thinking about what needs to happen in order for such things to happen and to get that 6-3 going. Right now in the Senate, there's 53 Republicans and 45 Democrats with 2 independents. So it would only take a handful of Republicans to not vote for her confirmation, and that would be the end of it. You would only need, I believe, you wouldn't just need 4. If every single Democrat voted nay and both independents voted nay, and 4 Republicans did, then that would put it at 49 yay and 51 nay.
Right. Yeah. So, again, yeah, a handful, and
that's not a lot to ask for or even assume at this point, just because some people may not be satisfied with the current president, or they might have bad blood with him. But another thing to watch out for is that this does go bigger than the presidency, and this determines a lot of the lawmaking and a lot of the, everyday concerns in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, as well as the presidency, for the foreseeable future. So they might be able to put their personal feuds aside to just make this happen. But I wouldn't put it, as the odds say, you said, what was it, 71%? 74.6%. I would put it at exactly that. I would say it's about a 75% chance that she goes through and about a 25% chance that she doesn't.
Yeah, well, again, we'll be interested to see. I'm sure it's going to come up in the debate tomorrow night, as will these tax return reports from the New York Times. But I also want to take a look at some of the polling, because I was surprised. Also, I mentioned this to you earlier. I was not expecting to have to watch another Senate race, because I thought all of them were pretty clear cut, except for the close ones that we were watching. Like I said, Maine is really close right now. Suzanne Collins is in deep danger of losing her Senate seat. Joni Ernst is in a danger of losing her Senate seat. Montana, Steve Bullock, the former Democratic governor who's now running for Senate, seems to be doing pretty well and gaining ground in that state. One thing I did not expect to have to watch was the Senate seat in South Carolina for Senator Lindsey Graham. That when I saw that yesterday, I was surprised. But recent polls have showed, because earlier in the year, like February, he had an average of about 10-point lead over whoever his opponent was going to be. But just earlier this month, in the end of July through the beginning of August and then the middle of September, just those two, um, polls are showing a dead heat tie in that state for who could win the Senate seat. And I'm sure the Republicans weren't planning on trying to have to bail out Lindsey Graham in South Carolina for a Senate seat. So that's an interesting development. That could tip should Suzanne Collins and Joni Ernst, which I'm gonna say most likely are the ones who are most likely to lose their seats, should those two senators lose their seats in the election, and I believe there's one more that the betting odds are showing could flip, because right now the betting odds are still projecting a 50-50 split. I believe it's in North Carolina where they're also projecting the Democrats to take a seat away from the Republicans. That would leave it right now, with everything being regular, 50-50. But should Lindsey Graham, who is losing points in the betting odds right now, lose his Senate seat, that'll be a 51-49 Senate, and then we don't have to deal with a 50-50 split Senate. Then the Democrats would have a majority, and they will be able to get laws passed with efficiency, I believe. They would be able to do their hardest, because I know that right now some of the biggest plans that the Democrats have on the table that they want to get done, should they take control of the Senate and the House and the president, should the trifecta, Democratic trifecta, come to our government, one of the things they would get to pass, like we said, new states, possibly with Washington, D.C., possibly Puerto Rico, two new states on our, two new stars on our flag. That is a real possibility should the Democrats take control of the Senate, as well as getting rid of the filibuster as a whole, just getting rid of it so that you don't need a supermajority to get past it. That way, even more bills would stop failing and actually just get passed or denied through simple majority votes. I don't know if that's going to happen. Again, these are all stretches, but should Lindsey Graham continue to struggle as as a senator in the state of South Carolina, that is something the Republicans have to watch out for. And I'm pretty sure they would try to fund him a little more, because I think it's a funding problem. Is that Lindsey Graham thought he had it, and then his money started to dry up, and even though he thought he was good in South Carolina, it seems to be that his opponent, Jamie Harrison is his name, is outperforming him, outspending him in the state, and could be a really, really big development on election night. Your thoughts on Lindsey Graham struggling in the state of South Carolina right now?
Well, I think it would be extremely interesting, to say the least, to see him get ousted from his seat. All across, even nationwide, the onslaught against Lindsey Graham has been enormous. People just generally don't really like him that much. Not as much as people don't like Mitch McConnell, but people aren't Lindsey Graham fans. And then seeing him right now at a even split on his home turf as the incumbent is already a difficult pill to swallow for him. So we'll see if the party has his back and tries to pump some more money into this campaign to get him back, because as you mentioned, he does play a very important role in the Senate itself. And with his loss, if they lose a couple more, then that makes it the 50-50. And then even losing one more than that will put the Republicans on the under, leaving a double control majority in House and Senate for the Democrats.
Right. So yeah, again, extremely interesting, and is, I think, a really good word to describe it, because this election, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the election itself, but it's playing out in ways we had not expected. And again, so many new developments coming in so quickly. And also, to everyone, if anyone's watching in Virginia, I believe early voting is still open right now. They said they have incredible longer lines than years before at early voting. I think early voting is the way to go this election, because you can spread out. You can say, okay, I can't go this day. There seems to be a lot of people there. I'll go another day. If you want to limit your exposure, but also want to go into a place physically and get your vote cast, I think it's the perfect option for you. Also, you will guarantee that your votes and your results will get counted because you went in and got it done instead of sending it through the mail or having absentee ballots being counted after the fact. Um, I also mentioned this just to my parents last night discussing. I said the projection models that this country has been running on for years. Um, in other democratic elections, they count votes straight through, and that's partially because we have an electoral college, which is different, but also our projections that are based on polling numbers on the day of election, which means also asking people as they're walking into the polls, who are you going to vote for? Okay, I'm going to vote for this person, and also asking people, including the famous exit polls that are showing, along with voter history, demographic research, and all of these other factors pulled in together, really help these projection models be extremely accurate based on who gets what votes and who wins what state. Certain states, I've already said this, certain states are going to be called on election night just because of the nature of the state. The state of Maryland is not going to be a nail biter to anybody. We're not going to wait until 4 a.m. to see which way Maryland goes. It's a pretty democratic state, and even though we have a pretty favorable Republican governor, the electorate here seems to like the Democratic Party a lot more, and therefore it's a pretty safe bet that Joe Biden will win the state of Maryland. Same thing with California, same thing with the state of Delaware, the same thing with the state of Illinois, and the same goes for the Republican strongholds like the states of Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Missouri and Utah. Even I think it will stay in the red column. But those states are not ones that you're going to be staying up nail biting. Those are the ones that when the polls close and they say the networks say we project that so and so is going to win this number of electoral votes. That's the projection models talking. That's before 100% of precincts are reporting in, and before even the votes have actually been physically counted, which is what they do at the Board of Elections. Now, this year is going to have to be different because of the number of people that they're expecting to use absentee and mail in ballots. We don't know exactly how that's going to turn out, how that's going to affect the projection models, but I think it'd be wise for the networks to hold back on making premature projections on who wins which state because that would throw the entire system into confusion, especially at an unprecedented time like this. You know, so it's up to each state to say, well, look, this is how many mail-in ballots we've received so far. It seems to be about, well, let's say a random number, 40% of the electorate, 30% of the electorate, let's say. They're going to have to wait until those things are physically counted for them to actually have, an accurate idea of who actually was the winner in that state. Because 30% can make the difference. 10% can make the difference if the state is close enough, like in Florida, like in Ohio, like in Pennsylvania, like in Michigan, all these close states. And so that's why we've been saying semi jokingly, semi not jokingly, this is not going to be election day, it's going to be election week. So we don't know what exactly to expect, but we're going to be interested to see how everything turns out. Certain states will be called on election night, but be advised that maybe the winner of the election will not be announced on November 3rd or even November 4th, 2020.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, just from the sheer amount of how much mail-in voting and absentee voting has been pushed this year in particular, it will run up the time that it takes the Board of Elections to count all of the ballots. And even early voting and voting in person on election day, that will still happen in mass. However, I think for a good portion of the United States, they are going to be doing mail-in voting just because they've made it so easy to. Everybody's gotten in the mail a little thing from the Board of Elections, your county Board of Elections, that says like, hey, if you need to request a mail-in ballot, do it. So it's quite literally handed to everybody to get a mail-in ballot. But I think it will be interesting to see how long it will take and to see how it ends up affecting the numbers and see if we see a significantly higher portion of Democrats voting through mail-in or Republicans voting for mail-in, or if it's just an even split. I would be interested in seeing those numbers.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll be interested to see. I think one of the other things I was checking the other polls in other states. Certain, like I said, each one of and I've linked a couple of them. I've linked use the one that really gives us the most ease of use and options to really, point out who we think is going to win which state, and a pretty easy interface to manage is a 270 to win. Link is in the description below if you would like to go on that. Their 2020 consensus map so far still has certain states holding out as being too close to call, but who they think is going to win each state. They already have Joe Biden with a 278 electoral votes, and that might be all he gets. This is, of course, assuming that he wins the state of Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, as well as Nevada and Virginia, along with the rest of the Democratic strongholds that are around the country, which include Maryland, Delaware, Washington, D.C., New Jersey, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, California, Oregon, Washington, and Nevada, and Colorado, New Mexico. That's 278. That could be how the election shakes out. You still think there's a good chance that the president takes Pennsylvania?
I think Pennsylvania is going to be the battleground state to watch. I could see it going the same way it did in 2016 with a just small enough margin of Donald Trump taking it that gave him the election
Corey,
in hand.
Hold on, Corey. You just froze a little.
Oh.
There we go. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Okay. You said 2020 is going to be the battleground state to watch.
Yeah, it could be, a mirror of 2016 when it just went red enough to give Donald Trump all those electoral college votes and it guaranteed him the election. It could go opposite like that, like it would in previous years under Obama when it went blue. But I really think that if it is going to go blue, if it is going to go red, it has to go one of those, really. I think this might be the year for it to, be the most impactful state. Like, for real, it's got 20 electoral college votes, and that can swing it any way you want.
Right. And we saw that it's possible. Nobody thought the president was going to win Pennsylvania last election cycle. So it's always a possibility that this could happen. There's also, the state of Ohio, even though Joe Biden is technically still leading in certain polls, it's still by 1%. And I think both of us agree that it's most likely going to stay red. That might be one of the ones that gets called later, as it usually does, because of the nature of the state. Georgia, I don't think is flipping this year. I believe personally, honestly, North Carolina and Arizona are the ones that really have the biggest potential to swing the other way, to switch more than any other state that are still considered swing states. And I think Joe Biden wins one of all of Maine, the state as a whole, and President Trump takes the one free district in Nebraska as well, leaving just Florida as the holdout, which it usually is during election cycles. And you think, and I also think, there's a huge possibility that President Trump wins the state of Florida. I think because of the Hispanic vote that's there is different than the Hispanic vote that exists everywhere else in the country, because there's a large Cuban population that does not like socialistic viewpoints, and the Democrats seem to be adopting those viewpoints en masse. And you think it's because a lot of people who are moving to Florida due to tax reasons and other situations, as well as an aging population, would contribute to them being more conservative, likely minded voters that will push it red. So I think that's a fair map based on what we think could happen on election day. Corey, your thoughts?
Yeah, I could see this going. I think it's really going to come down to Pennsylvania, of course. And then Arizona and North Carolina are going to also be ones to watch, because losing even one of those almost guarantees Joe Biden the victory. And I think Florida is a safe bet to go red. But I do think Arizona and North Carolina might have a possibility of going blue.
So let's say leave these three states: Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona.
Yeah.
Let's leave them blank, and let's look at the tally on the top. 259, 233. So those.
Right. So if he loses Arizona, that's the only one he can afford to lose. Or no,
barely.
well, because that would put him at 279 or 270. So he can't afford to lose any one of those three states if the map goes the entire way.
Right. And
However, if go ahead.
I know that pundits are still saying that Michigan and Wisconsin are still a chance for him to win, but he's already pulled money out of those states, and I think he's accepted the fact that he's not going to win those states. So this really is going to come down to these three states: Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Arizona. Two of the three being states that almost readily will go for a Republican. The exceptions were with President then Senator Obama being such a charismatic and likable candidate, going up against the Republican Senator John McCain, who at the time was, even though he was a maverick, it wasn't favorable to him in that environment because of the situation that the country was in at the hands of what they thought was the Republican president's doing. George W. Bush, 2008. Also, bank bailouts and everything of the sort, and the unfavorable nature of the situation, military operations in Afghanistan and Iraq at the time. But really, North Carolina I think, it's a more conservative state than everybody realizes. Everybody's like, well, Charlotte and Durham and Raleigh, and I'm like, that's great, but you also got to remember a lot of these people are conservative church people who go to church every Sunday, and they will vote Republican most of the time. I believe. And I think even though there might be shifting demographics in North Carolina, I do personally believe that there's enough conservatives in there to really consider it still a real, I think, a bellwether instead of a bellwether that really goes with what the country needs. Because this state went with Donald Trump in 2016. So we're, again, interested to see. And Arizona being a border state, even though it's close to Nevada and New Mexico and California, it has been known to be more conservative than its neighbors to the east and to the west, simply because of its proximity to the border to Mexico. And as you know, border control is a big issue in this state. And again, I'll be interested to see how that plays out in the polling numbers.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, this comes down to it's a game of inches, and every single different state has its own distinct voting population, has its own demographics, and that'll all come out come election day or election week, I should say. Once everything's counted and said and done, I would love to look at the demographic charts and look over those in a podcast and see what we think and how it all ended up like this.
Right. So, yeah. So, with that being said, I don't think there's really much else for us to cover. There's, again, a lot of information going to be coming to every single one of us in the next few weeks, simply because the debates are going to come out, and we'll review those when they come out. The vice presidential debate is going to come out. That'll be an interesting one, I think. A very interesting debate that people aren't hyping. Everyone's hyping up, President Trump versus Vice President Biden. But I think Vice President Pence versus Senator Harris will be an interesting debate, because they're both actually very capable politicians who are not prone to, I don't think, gaffes or slip-ups. And I'll be interested to see, because both of them are really what a lot of people look at when it comes to the presidential tickets. Because even though people, I'll talk, I'll say this from experience. I know people that say, well, at least Mike Pence is there in office to help the president, because they like Mike Pence more than they like Donald Trump, especially a lot of church conservative people. And in terms of the Democratic Party, they've been waiting for a woman. So they're literally just waiting for Joe Biden to, have that one term to put her in. And then that way she'll be, like I said, the heir apparent to the party and be the next possibly president of the United States, as I think is her goal in general anyway, considering she went to run for that office earlier this year. So, again, very, very, very interested to see how Mike Pence and Kamala Harris debate goes. And I think it'll be good. I'm also interested in a lot of these moderators for these debates. I know we said Chris Wallace is going to be the one tomorrow, but we also have to look at the other moderators. I believe the moderator for the vice presidential debate is the senior Washington bureau chief for USA Today, So these are not the usual, what I would call superstar news anchors that we usually see. They've gone for a different direction. I'm kind of glad they did, um, because you get new faces and new types of questions instead of just what we expect from um, Anderson Cooper and Dana Bash um, moderating a debate. It gives a new face and a new flavor to these things. Yeah, Susan Page, Washington bureau chief for USA Today, um, and that one's going to take place on Wednesday, October 7th in Salt Lake City, Utah, the University of Utah.
Go Utes.
The Utes. What do you call someone from Utah?
That's a Ute.
It's a Ute. The second presidential debate, I like this idea. I really do. Is Steve Scully, senior executive producer and political editor, and has been the backup moderator for the last, I believe, 4 or 5 presidential debates. He is the senior executive producer and political editor for C-SPAN Networks.
Oh, that's great.
I know, yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I'm like, that makes a lot of sense.
Love me some C-SPAN.
We love C-SPAN. No commentary, just the news.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great, and I think that's a good one. He's definitely not someone who's going to interject. He'll let you talk your mind out. He's been known as the most patient man in America because of he manages the phone calls when they call into the lines on the network or on C-SPAN when they're like, hey, let's get some phone calls in here. So he'll just have to sit there and listen. He's like, thanks for calling. So I'm interested to see how he moderates. I don't know if he'll be as assertive as a moderator as Chris Wallace. I don't believe he will. I think he'll be more hands back, laid back, kind of. I'll let you say what you need to say, but I'll let you say what you need to say, and I'm not going to try to throw this in one person's favor or the other, which I think is a really good idea. And then the third presidential debate is going to be moderated by Kristen Welker, co-anchor of Weekend Today and White House correspondent for NBC News. So this will be the last one. This will be October 22nd from Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee. Again, we'll be interested to see how all of this go. I like the new faces. I like the new moderators. I really like Steve Scully. Gotta love some C-SPAN.
Everybody should love some C-SPAN.
But all that being said, I think it's a good idea, and I'm interested to see how all of these debates turn out. So we're really coming into the home stretch of this election, of this year. There's still a lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving parts with the Supreme Court nomination and confirmation process. There's a lot of things going on with these reports that are coming out from the New York Times. Should this be the only one? I don't know if it'll take an effect, but should more reports and more records be released or found, in one way or another, how will they affect the electoral process? And if you can go vote early, I would suggest that being your best bet. I am personally already making myself I'm gonna make myself go vote early. That was my plan from the beginning. I don't feel like waiting on election day. That way I have my election day free to really look at everything, how everything's starting to turn out. But again, we'll see how everything turns out. And, home stretch, it's almost over. Hopefully it'll be over quickly.
It's actually almost just getting started.
Oh, great.
Because we have debates.
I know. It's really when everyone really starts to pay attention and does the polls and everything. So
it's the beginning of the end.
Yeah. Hopefully no one has 87% chance of becoming president.
Oof. Hate to see it. Hate to see it. Bad for the brand.
You didn't.
Hate to see it, man.
It was there was a full.
It's the same thing as a 28-3 lead or a 3-1 lead.
That's exactly what that is.
In the same year that Golden State blew a 3-1 lead, and was that the same year that the Falcons played the Patriots 28-3?
Yeah, in February.
The same year of 3-1, 28-3, and 78%.
Have we seen any upsets lately?
In politics or in sports?
Both.
The Falcons in 2 consecutive games.
Oh yeah, the
point leads.
By the way, we have We Talk Sports podcast on Fridays or
Saturdays.
Fridays or Saturdays at 8 p.m.
Or-
or earlier.
Yeah,
It
it
depends.
doesn't. We don't know.
We're figuring it out. But
Yeah.
we talk sports
to
and
that
thing,
play.
but also, yeah. But in any case, biggest thing I can just say to everybody: do your own research. Don't just take our word for something. Don't just take the news's word for it. Do your own research. Read your own articles. Search up your own candidates for your election and your ballot, and be as informed as possible. And go out and vote the best way that you can and the safest way possible for you. So, all that being said, I have been Gerald.
And I have been Corey.
And this has been the We Talk Politics podcast. We'll see you again next week, hopefully on Monday night.